we're going to be looking into how I drew out a scene involving 3D looking buildings with hand drawn frame by frame animation. Hello guys, welcome to another tutorial set in Adobe Flash CC. It's perhaps not the most efficient way of doing this scene, but if you do it, you can get some cool looking effects from doing this. So firstly, you're able to add some cool effects like speed blurs to your walls and warping of the walls if you want to make it look like a fisheye lens or some kind of effect like that. And secondly, it will blend in with your scene perfectly, so there's no problem of integrating, say you had a 3D object into a 2D scene. That would take a lot of tricky integration, and in my opinion it can really take the viewer out of the whole experience. So by doing frame by frame with your environment, like drawing it in frame by frame and with frame by frame animation, the two integrate quite seamlessly, and it can look pretty cool. And it means that I get to do my motion blur effect, which I enjoy doing. So this scene might be a little bit hard to follow what's happening at times, because I was jumping all over the place between frames, and this was to gently improve the entire animation sequence as a whole, rather than drawing one frame fully before moving on to the next frame. And I guess this is because of the approach I was using, where I make a very simple drawing of a shape in perspective across a bunch of frames, and then I improve one of these drawings. And this then has a knock-on effect with the other frames, because then I have to improve the drawing for all the other frames too. So one person asked if this part was rotoscoped, and it's definitely not rotoscoped, and I didn't use any 3D devices either. I think it might look like it is rotoscoped, maybe because it's not a very common practice to use this kind of scene in animation. This technique is not that common, I guess. But really, it's just a process of drawing out again and again on each frame, smoothing out as you go, and using what you know about perspective. So there's lots of perspective rules that you can look up, and there's books on perspective, which I have, some of which I have read, and there's classes on perspective. Perspective goes pretty deep, like there's a lot to learn about perspective rules. But the rules in animation that I use when drawing man-made structures like this and animating them, I have three different ways of thinking, which I try and have at the front of my mind when going into a scene like this. So the first one is very easy principle: things are bigger when they are close to the camera. Sounds simple, but it also works in the opposite way. So things are smaller when they're further away from the camera. And when you take into consideration that you might be moving through some of these objects, they actually get progressively bigger and progressively smaller. So the size of anything in the frame can change at any time if you're doing a 3D like camera movement into a 3D structure. So the second one is that things move faster when they're closer to the camera, and they move slower when they're further away from the camera. So a lot like the first principle, except we're talking about movement here, motion, If something's really close to the camera, it will only take 1 or 2 frames for it to fully move in and out of the camera's path. However, if it's like right in the distance, it could be having a very slow motion. And number 3, as lines move further away from the camera, they point towards a singularity, or vanishing point, as it's often called in photography and art in general. With the lines, you need to make sure that if they're in a very simple geometric structure like a cube or something like that, or a cylinder, the lines are going to be usually facing one way, and if you were to extend those lines, they would connect towards a single point. So that one's a little bit more tricky. Have a look out for any examples where I would use that in this drawing. Also, I have a few tips, I guess. A quick tip for when you're editing your frames: if you're looking to smooth out the bumps in your frames and get a nice consistent smooth motion, like on a glide cam or something. A way of revealing all of these various bumps in your animation is to scrub or play through the animation at a faster rate than what you would normally play at. Then as it's playing through, focus on a different corner or line each time it's playing through and just watch it move, and you should be able to locate the frames where the lines or objects are out of place by doing this technique. Another thing that I sometimes do is draw the lines that would be behind the structure that you're drawing. So as if it's a wireframe mesh in like a 3D program like Maya or something, just pretend it is. And then after you have got the structure drawn, you can then erase the lines that would be covered by the surface of whatever you're drawing. I use that technique a little bit in this. Look out for it and see if it helps you. So if you're trying to draw a 3D structure, it might help to draw all the lines and pretend that that it's like a see-through object. And that can help you to just know where everything is and to make sure that all the angles are more or less accurate. So I'm going to let this play for a while so you can see me actually put these ideas into practice. I hope this has given you some insight into how to make one of these scenes for yourself. As always, please subscribe if you haven't already. Please leave a comment with your suggestion of what I should make next, or if you have any questions you'd like answered, please leave them below. Also, please visit my website for more animation tutorials. I have in-depth tutorials that you will only find exclusively on my website. I'll link to it in the description, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. And then you need to decide the length of time that the shot will run on for. Now, you can alter the amount of time that it runs on for later, but it's nice to kind of extend them out a little bit to get an idea of that. Now it goes on to actually creating the animation itself. So the third one is